Previously, we witnessed how the issue with Mr. Park had been resolved effortlessly thanks to Jaehyuk. Unfortunately, Mr. Park isn't the only one that's bothering Yoonkyum. Having decided to end any connection with his shameless ex once and for all, he called the lying cheater and was firm in his intention of ending everything with him. Yoonkyum had thought that was enough, but an unexpected visitor suddenly appeared before him the following day. Is this the beginning of another drama? Let's soon find out. Going back to the morning before work started, Yoonkyum and Jaehyuk were yet again being sneaky as they tried to enter their company's building separately. It might be a bit of a hassle, but Yoonkyum admits that he's also enjoying the thrill of dating a coworker secretly. And it's so sweet that Jaehyuk always makes Yoonkyum go up first. Yoonkyum was thinking about inviting or making Jaehyuk dinner later as he sat at his desk when he suddenly received a message from someone. The message immediately got him up from his chair. And yes, it was from his ex, who found himself in the lobby of the company building, clearly telling Yoonkyum to come down and meet him if Yoonkyum didn't want him to cause a scene. Yoonkyum had no choice but to hurriedly meet the jerk at the lobby. As expected from a bare-faced ex, he was full of himself when Yoonkyum appeared before him. He commented how he had always known that Yoonkyum worked for a good company, although he never expected it to be that good. And it's thanks to that you had a convenient cash cow for so long. Yoonkyum didn't say anything in response. However, he started getting conscious of the stares they were receiving from other employees coming in. And so Yoonkyum dragged the jerk into a deserted area outside the building. Of course, the shameless jerk thinks that Yoonkyum only did that because he's still into him and wants to be alone with him. Yeah, right, in pigs fly. He suddenly hugged Yoonkyum from behind and told him he missed, obviously wanting to return with Yoonkyum like before. Yoonkyum resisted and even called his ex a psycho. And that's just saying it mildly, although I agree. The name-calling, however, seemed to have made the jerk snap that Yoonkyum found himself violently pushed into the wall. He then commented how Yoonkyum is becoming brave for even thinking of calling him that. Not to mention he even ignored the jerk's calls and messages to the point that he had no choice but to go to Yoonkyum's workplace to get a hold of Yoonkyum. I can imagine how toxic this relationship was. Anyway, Yoonkyum tried to fight back, asking the jerk again what he came for, pointing out how he's already married with a kid. The statement made his ex snap again. And this time, Yoonkyum found himself shoved to the ground, his hair pulled. The shameless jerk turned the table against Yoonkyum, accusing him of being equally at fault since it was with him that the jerk had cheated with. Be that as it may, Yoonkyum broke it off as soon as he found out the jerk was already hitched. How dare he say that? Where is Jaehyuk when you need him? Someone needs a good beating here. Yoonkyum once again asked what the jerk came there for and if he was just in for money. He responded that he doesn't just want money. So he is, in fact, in it for the money. The jerk also showed up because he missed Yoonkyum and got divorced. And Yoonkyum is partly to be blamed. And what do you know? It seems like he's also looking for a roommate to freeload with. The jerk then threatened Yoonkyum that he wouldn't get angry if Yoonkyum didn't go against him. And so, they should meet at Yoonkyum's place later that night. That is if Yoonkyum doesn't want to lose his job. So he just leveled up from being a stalker to a blackmailer. I feel so sorry for his daughter. No one deserves to have a father like this. And as if that wasn't enough threats, he even dragged Jaehyuk. He was telling Yoonkyum not to let that guy find out unless he wanted to ruin his boyfriend's career. When the jerk finally left, all Yoonkyum could do was silent cry in frustration at how messed up this situation he had gotten himself into. Not long after, Yoonkyum returned to the office. Hyojin was immediately onto him, asking him where he had been. As an excuse, Yoonkyum produced takeout coffee and told her he bought coffee for them. Jaehyuk suddenly showed up then, making Yoonkyum flinch. He tried to act nonchalant and tried to offer Jaehyuk coffee instead. Jaehyuk, however, was observant when it comes to Yoonkyum and asked him what had happened to his hands. A beatard appeared when you weren't on guard duty. That's what happened. As soon as Jaehyuk pointed out Yoonkyum's injuries, Hyojin and Hyunsoo were onto Yoonkyum. Everyone was very concerned about the scratches on his hands. Yoonkyum, of course, quickly made an excuse for tripping when he was on his way to get the coffee. He tried to lighten the mood by saying how it'd be a disaster if it happened when he was on his way back. Jaehyuk asked for some band-aids from Hyojin and then told Yoonkyum to see him for a bit, to which Yoonkyum had no choice but to comply. And so, the two of them returned to their little corner of the supply room where Jaehyuk tended to Yoonkyum's injuries. Jaehyuk asked Yoonkyum again if he had just fallen and not because he was hiding something from him. Jaehyuk clearly didn't believe Yoonkyum's excuse, although he also wanted Yoonkyum to come clean himself. After all, Yoonkyum already promised not to hide things. Yoonkyum remembered that promise, but he was genuinely worried about getting Jaehyuk into trouble because of him. Even though it's been a while since he broke up with his ex, the jerk's influence over Yoonkyum is significant, and it's affecting Yoonkyum's judgment. In the end, Yoonkyum still denied that anything was wrong. He sweetly assured Jaehyuk, who told Yoonkyum to send him on a coffee errand next time instead, which Yoonkyum obviously denied. Who makes their boss go on a coffee errand anyway? Anyway, determined not to get Jaehyuk involved, Yoonkim told him he had plans with Haejun and some friends later that night, and that Yoonkim had to return to his place before heading back to Jaehyuk's. Dear All Jaehyuk didn't look like he suspected anything and just became clingy as he conceded. Yoonkim, on the other hand, worries that Jaehyuk will feel disappointed or betrayed once he finds out whom he will meet later. Why would he? It's not like Yoonkim is going behind his boyfriend's back to meet with his ex, who seemed to be into him for some reason. Oh, wait, he is. More than Jaehyuk being disappointed with him, he's more afraid of hurting Jaehyuk. Well, aren't you already hurting him by hiding things from him in the first place? Later that evening, Yoonkim did show up in front of his unit building. The jerk was there, of course, diligently waiting for Yoonkim outside. Since Yoonkim changed his door number, he couldn't get inside Yoonkim's place. The shameless jerk had the nerve to act like everything would return to the way it was before just because Yoonkim showed up as he told him to. But apparently, Yoonkim had other ideas. Yoonkim declared that he's moving out of his unit soon, which won't take long since he doesn't have that much stuff anyway. Not only that, he's also going to change his number. The point is, although he did come to meet the jerk, it's going to be the last time ever. The jerk tried to wiggle himself in, but Yoonkim didn't let him. Yoonkim bravely told his ex to go through with his threats, that he doesn't care if everyone finds out about their relationship or if he loses his job. After all, Yoonkim is so done being controlled by someone like him. Little Yoonkim is finally standing up for himself. Now, this is the Yoonkim that we all wanted to see. But that's just us. The jerk, of course, didn't like what Yoonkim just said. He grabbed Yoonkim by his collar and dragged him to a corner. He said things like he thought Yoonkim would listen to him if he were easy. He should just have done things his way from the start. Once again, he pushed Yoonkim to the ground and even dared to ask Yoonkim what he meant by someone like him. Despite knowing the consequences, Yoonkim didn't back down and courageously told the bully how he's a lowlife who gets off and gets what he wants from threatening people. That he is. It's no wonder his wife divorced him, and he even tried dragging Yoonkim to his level. As expected, the jerk didn't like Yoonkim's response, and he started getting more violent and verbally and physically abusive. But even then, Yoonkim tried to resist the jerk, not even when he started slapping and beating poor Yoonkim. As the jerk was busy with Yoonkim, he didn't notice the car that pulled not far from where they were nor the arrival of the man who stood right behind him. But Yoonkim did, and all he could think about is how he hated showing Jaehyuk his pathetic side like this. Now, this is getting more interesting. The jerk looked up behind him and saw who Yoonkim was looking at. At first, the jerk thought that Yoonkim had told Jaehyuk about him and that they were together coming there. That wasn't the case, as Jaehyuk had come there alone, although he had hoped otherwise. Yoonkim immediately tried to explain to Jaehyuk about what had happened. Although, before he could, the jerk was already on the ground after Jaehyuk punched him. Yoonkim tried to stop Jaehyuk from his assault but was ignored. Jaehyuk continued to beat the jerk just like he did to Yoonkim earlier. Well, it's more intense since Jaehyuk is using fists. Now, this is what I'm talking about, Mr. Guard Dog. As the jerk attempts to stop Jaehyuk's assault, he exclaims how Jaehyuk can't just start beating someone up. Then why was Yoonkim subjected to the same treatment earlier? Jaehyuk paused for a bit after the jerk said that, but it's only to tell him that if it's compensation money he wants, then Jaehyuk can give it to him. Therefore, he should make it worthwhile for Jaehyuk in return, even if it meant the jerk would be bedridden afterward. Jaehyuk would have continued beating the living lights out of the jerk, but Yoonkim finally managed to stop him this time before things got out of hand. He promised that he'd explain to Jaehyuk what happened. Whether it was Yoonkim's earnest pleading or his beaten-up face, Jaehyuk gave in without saying anything. He just made Yoonkim choose between returning to Yoonkim's place or his. Of course, Yoonkim chooses to go back with Jaehyuk, and just like that, Jaehyuk grabbed Yoonkim's wrist and left the area without saying anything more. Just imagine how awkward the ride home would have been in Jaehyuk's car, especially for Yoonkim. As soon as they got home, Yoonkim tried to explain himself, apologizing to Jaehyuk for not telling him anything. He explained that the jerk was his ex, who tried contacting him out of the blue. Jaehyuk suddenly hugged Yoonkim as he let him continue to explain what happened. Yoonkim said he tried to deal with it by telling his ex off and not to bother him anymore, but the jerk suddenly appeared at the company. So Yoonkim decided to meet him one last time and even told him that he was moving out of his place. As Yoonkim tried to explain everything, Jaehyuk rubbed and groped him. It's the only way he can show his frustration and upset with Yoonkim without getting angry. And Yoonkim probably understands that as well, so he just let him. Well, he did look like he was enjoying it anyway. Yoonkim added that he did want to tell Jaehyuk about it all, but there's a reason he couldn't. Jaehyuk then admitted how he already knew that the reason was because Yoonkim couldn't bring himself to admit to Jaehyuk how he dated a married man with a kid, a revelation that surprised Yoonkim. Jaehyuk had already suspected that Yoonkim was hiding things from him, and since Yoonkim wouldn't admit anything, Jaehyuk had to take matters into his own hands. This is an invasion of privacy right here, but we can let it slide since it was for a good cause. Suddenly, Jaehyuk pushed and pinned Yoonkim to the couch, letting the latter know how upset he is with him. Although, in all fairness, he still tries to be gentle, unlike some low-life prick who immediately becomes violent at the slightest sign of things not going his way. Yoonkim's lies had kept piling up. And if Jaehyuk hadn't arrived on time, Yoonkim would probably lie again about what happened to his face. Jaehyuk pointed out how, as Yoonkim's boyfriend, he had the right to know about things like this. Jaehyuk was upset that Yoonkim would rather suffer alone than tell him and share the burden. When Yoonkim didn't say anything in response, Jaehyuk released Yoonkim and tried to leave. But Yoonkim quickly stopped him by holding onto Jaehyuk's arm, only to hesitate once again and make Jaehyuk try to leave yet again. And that was when Yoonkim admitted that he only did that because he felt so pathetic. Whether it was at work or his personal life, he's a mess and always keeps getting into trouble. Yoonkim added that he's scared Jaehyuk will be disappointed with him when his pride is already wounded. Plus, what if, by telling Jaehyuk, he gets him into trouble, too? That's the last thing Yoonkim will ever want. Well, that's a typical Yook for you, which drives seems crazy every time. Jaehyuk was no exception. Instead of getting angry, however, Jaehyuk just started making out with Yoonkim again as the latter tried to apologize again and again. Jaehyuk then brought Yoonkim to their bedroom, where he would make Yoonkim show him how sorry he was. In the guise of punishment, they started doing more intense things than usual. And instead of the usual dirty talks, Jaehyuk was telling Yoonkim off, saying stuff like there's no way Jaehyuk would ever be disappointed in Yoonkim because he knows how a good boy he is. Jaehyuk's little good boy. And so, Jaehyuk made Yoonkim promise again to trust him and never lie for Jaehyuk's gain. Jaehyuk mumbled that he wanted to just keep Yoonkim to himself since everyone kept on bullying him. In return, Jaehyuk promised to get rid of the ex for good. Well, this is strike 2 for Yoonkim. Although I feel that Jaehyuk will let it slide, even with how often Yoonkim breaks his promise. It's safe to say that their method of making up is going well, although it was far from over. After finishing a round, Jaehyuk suddenly hugged Yoonkim and regrets getting angry at him when Yoonkim is obviously a sweetheart. Jaehyuk admitted that he snapped earlier because he was so jealous, simply because the jerk was Yoonkim's ex-boyfriend. And the fact that Yoonkim kept hiding things from him didn't help. Jaehyuk also apologized for not moving sooner, even though he knew about Yoonkim's situation. It was only because he wanted Yoonkim to tell him himself. That is, for Yoonkim to always tell Jaehyuk everything first and to rely only on him. This dude smells a red flag this late in the game. For what it's worth, though, Jaehyuk's by far the most decent of Yoonkim's relationships. Jaehyuk's words seemed to have touched Yoonkim, and he promised Jaehyuk that's what he'll do from then on. All he had now for Jaehyuk was love and trust. And with that, they finally made up, sealed by a lingering kiss and I love yous. Later, after a very long and good bath, the two are now in their comfortable clothes, ready to go to bed. That is after Jaehyuk once again checked if they had already treated all of Yoonkim's bruises inflicted by his ex. They then moved to bed and got comfortable, lying beside each other. Yoonkim honestly admitted that he likes sleeping with Jaehyuk, literally, although the latter had other thoughts and tried teasing him. Yoonkim also admitted how all the guys he had dated before were jerks. When their parents died a few years back, the twins were babies and he was still studying. Yoonkim was devastated and scared of the responsibilities that was suddenly shoved at him. He needed someone to rely on and give him the love he needed. That was when he met that shameless jerk ex of his, and the two of them started dating. The jerk was toxic, but there were times when he was excellent. Yoonkim had thought all along that that's just how love is. Well, it's times like this when you can't help feeling bad for a character you were roasting repeatedly. Catching himself, Yoonkim felt embarrassed for suddenly sharing something that sounded like an excuse. Jaehyuk, however, did not think that. He felt sad that he couldn't be there for Yoonkim when he needed someone to rely on the most. Then again, Yoonkim wasn't thinking about it much anymore since it's been a while. What had already happened. If the two of them had met earlier, they'd have just stayed friends, and he likes how things are for them now. Jaehyuk, though, didn't feel the same. He said he would have still liked Yoonkim whether they had met earlier or later. That's the power of first love for you. It was so sweet that anyone would have been disconcerted like Yoonkim. Later that night, while Yoonkim was fast asleep, Jaehyuk silently got up from the bed and was with someone on the phone. Jaehyuk was talking to someone about taking care of something. The person on the other line affirmed while looking at many documents regarding a man who looked like Yoonkim's ex. The person explained how the jerk has been lying low, has a history of fraud, and has much debt, and that he had handed it to them. I'm hoping he's talking about some goons or loan sharks. Am I too much? Anyway, Jaehyuk instructed to have the jerk get another loan and to get the money off him, and that he doesn't care what happens after. Feeling relieved, Jaehyuk smiled toward their bedroom where Yoonkim was sleeping. Look at this dude. So, he's not just a hot superior who came from money. Not long after, Yoonkim received a message from his jerk of an ex, who apologized for everything he had done and even sent him the money he had borrowed. Yoon was confused and couldn't help feeling surprised at the fact that of all the weirdos he had dated so far, the jerk was the first who had ever accepted his wrongdoing. Yoon was still fusing about what could have happened to his ex to have a 180-degree change of heart when Hyunsoo and Yujin came over to his side. They asked why he was so serious about looking at his phone and if it was from his ex, who was getting married. These busybodies are so adorable. When Yoon was by himself again after sending his coworkers away, he remembered how Jae-hyuk said he had to take matters into his own hands after Yoon didn't tell him anything. Yoon thought that Jae-hyuk had asked Haejin about his circumstances and decided he should be straight with Jae-hyuk this time. Yoon sent Jae-hyuk a message soon after, asking him to hang out after work. And of course, it's just like Jae-hyuk to find the message cute. He's a sucker for Yoon. What can we say? Later that day, the two of them are now settled in a restaurant. Yoon was in such high spirits as he told Jae-hyuk he would be treating him. Noticing his mood, Jae-hyuk asked if something good had happened to Yoon for him to do that. At first, Yoon tried to beat around the bush. Still, soon after, he told Jae-hyuk immediately that he received a message from his ex, who apologized for everything he had done and even paid the money he owed Yoon. Yoon was fusing over it, but Jae-hyuk just listened calmly. It's only because he knew about it before Yoon ever did. Yoon thought that the change in his ex happened because Jae-hyuk beat him up, and for that, he's thankful. Oh dear, if only you knew. After dinner, they were leisurely walking while having ice cream. They had an adorable argument about who was snuggling who every night. And here we are, only having our pillows beside us. Suddenly, Yoon said he'd start getting ready to leave his old place. He explained that since the contract to his home is about to end anyway and he still felt uneasy living there even though his ex said he wouldn't bother him again, it's about time that he did. Plus, he was far from work, and Jae-hyuk's was close. As Jae-hyuk listened, his hand that was holding Yoon's trembled with expectations, only to have it all crushed when Yoon said how he decided to move to a place near Jae-hyuk's. It will be a bit expensive, but he's sure he'll be able to afford a studio apartment, and they can hang out more often. Jae-hyuk was expecting Yoon to say he would move in with him instead, but that's not the case. Yoon quickly noticed how Jae-hyuk started sulking after what he said and asked him what he was on about. Instead of answering, however, Jae-hyuk asked Yoon where he had slept last week and night and where he'd probably sleep that night and a month after, all of which Yoon answered as Jae-hyuk's place, after which Jae-hyuk seriously asked Yoon to move in with him. This is the most practical thing I've seen in this series. Yoon was taken aback by what Jae-hyuk said. He had probably wanted that and thought they'd eventually get to that point someday, but he probably didn't expect Jae-hyuk to bring it up just like that. I, for one, thought they already moved in together long ago. Who pays for a house and does not even sleep there? Still, what Jae-hyuk had said once again moved Yoon and made him realize and feel just how much Jae-hyuk loved him. Without saying anything more, Yoon agreed. Not long after, Yoon found himself packing his stuff from his place. There was still a lot to pack, even though he had thought that he had already brought most of his things to Jae-hyuk's. Jae-hyuk was also there helping him, but he had stayed quiet all this time. It's all because he's upset due to the presence of one other person in the room. Haejin was also helping them pack stuff after he suddenly called Yoon and found out how he was packing to move from his place. All was with good intentions, but since Haejin still had yet to learn who Jae-hyuk was to Yoon, the atmosphere in the room was tense. For example, Haejin casually leaned to Yoon, asking why his boss, Jae-hyuk, was there. Jae-hyuk was seething at the back in jealousy as Yoon tried to make excuses about how the two of them were close, and Jae-hyuk was just nice enough to help him move. Yoon felt uncomfortable as he felt Jae-hyuk's glares at him, so he forced Haejin to go out for a while to get a breather. Haejin agreed and decided to get them drinks on his way. As soon as he left, Yoon went to hug the very upset and jealous Jae-hyuk. He was trying his best to console him, assuring him that there was nothing to be jealous of since Haejin was trying to help. Jae-hyuk asked why they couldn't just tell him they were dating, to which Yoon said they would, but not while packing. Yeah, that would have been awkward on so many levels. After the move, he promised Jae-hyuk to introduce him to Haejin formally. Well, Jae-hyuk seems like he's still not consoled. That was when he noticed a wallet, and an idea popped. Jae-hyuk told Yoon to kiss him before Haejin returned, to which Yoon readily agreed. The kiss turned to a full-blown make-out session, which will probably lead to something else if Haejin didn't suddenly come back for his wallet, which he forgot to bring and saw them in an awkward position, to which Yoon explained that it was just them fooling around. After Haejin left again, Yoon called out to Jae-hyuk for doing that on purpose so they would get caught by Haejin. Well, it failed in the end. It would have been epic if Jae-hyuk succeeded. Yoonkim was a bit upset, but the interrupted makeout session continued. In the end, they managed to get everything done without any mishaps. Haejin seemed to have left ahead of them, so Jaehyuk was back to his usual clingy self now that only two were left. Yoonkim was saying that all that's left for them is to bring a couple of boxes to Grandma's, and the rest to Jaehyuk's, which the latter quickly corrected as theirs instead. Well, Yoonkim is now finally moving in with someone. Although their relationship is still pretty new, and they still have much to learn about each other, they're both prepared for that. Yoonkim is excited about it, for one. On their way to Grandma's place to drop off some boxes of Yoonkim's stuff, Yoonkim suddenly asked Jaehyuk to pull over. They were near their high school, and Yoonkim wanted to look around. It seemed like school was over, so the two were allowed to walk around their alma mater leisurely. It's been so long since they last came to the campus. Yoonkim remembered how he always got into trouble for being late and acted cute, so the teacher would let it slide. This is unlike Jaehyuk, who didn't seem to have been late. Being immersed in the past, Yoonkim unconsciously mentioned Haejin, who also often got into trouble for being late because of him. However, Yoonkim caught himself, but it was already too late, and Jaehyuk was pouting again. Jaehyuk then asked Yoonkim what if he and Haejin were drowning. Whom would Yoonkim save first? Yoonkim was speechless but still tried to humor him. Since Haejin knows how to swim, he'll save Jaehyuk. To which Jaehyuk said that he also knows how to swim. That wasn't the answer Jaehyuk wanted to hear. And so, to appease him, Yoonkim once again answered that he'd save Jaehyuk since he was his boyfriend. If my boyfriend started acting like this, although I would find it adorable, I'd probably give him the stinky eye. Then again, I don't have one, so whatever. It's been a decade since they've been there, and many new facilities have been added. Although the waiting shed that Yoonkim used to hang out at with his friends is still there. Jaehyuk said he also remembers since he used to watch Yoonkim then. Jaehyuk admitted that he used to watch Yoonkim from his classroom. And since looking out the window isn't something suspicious, no one noticed. He used to watch Yoonkim being happy, which also made him happy, another red flag. But again, Yoonkim didn't seem to mind since Jaehyuk's confession made him so happy that he suddenly kissed him. Yoonkim is glad they met again after a long time and were allowed to fall in love. Yoonkim was meeting his close friends and was showing them Jaehyuk's picture. They commented that he was handsome and tall, which Yoonkim confirmed. They asked Yoonkim if he was the guy that Yoonkim turned down when they were still in high school. Well, they're asking him the standard questions out of concern. After all, Yoonkim did have a history of only dating jerks, more than finally finding a decent guy. However, the most shocking news that Yoonkim dropped is that the two of them have moved in together. This shows how severe Yoonkim's relationship is this time around. Haejin was also present. He felt cringe, remembering when he had dinner with Yoonkim and Jaehyuk and how he had treated Yoonkim then. One of Yoonkim's friends asked what Jaehyuk liked about Yoonkim, but Yoonkim said he's not so sure himself. Anyway, most of Yoonkim's friends seemed to approve of Jaehyuk. Yoonkim received a message from Jaehyuk, who seemed to come to pick him up. Before leaving, he told them he'd formally introduce him to them soon, so they should be ready. They acted all chill as Yoonkim left, but they were curious about Jaehyuk to the point that they even spied on the window to try and catch a glimpse. In the car, Yoonkim was telling Jaehyuk how his friends said that he's good looking and that he'll introduce him to them soon. Tisk, show off. One morning, Jaehyuk is again on a mission to make food for Yoonkim. And once again, he failed. And, of course, the problem is not him but the ingredients he used, for example, the eggs. Yoonkim came into the kitchen and commented how Jaehyuk once again managed to burn the food he was making. And although Jaehyuk tried to make all of Yoonkim's favorites, the combination is questionable. Anyway, Yoonkim tried to teach Jaehyuk the proper way of cooking, at least something simple like a sunny side up. Jaehyuk was so adorable, looking focused on that simple dish, that Yoonkim couldn't help but suddenly kiss Jaehyuk. Jaehyuk took it a bit further, eventually costing them another burnt food. What did the egg ever do to you? At work, Yoonkim briefly conversed with Yoojin and Hyunsoo, discussing how Yoonkim seemed awkward around Jaehyuk. They observed how the two had barely talked to each other these days. Yoonkim said he doesn't feel uncomfortable around Jaehyuk or anything. If only these two knew what was happening between those two. Later that day, Jaehyuk and Yoonkim were at the rooftop. Yoonkim told Jaehyuk how their coworkers thought they had a super awkward relationship, which was good since it meant they were pretty good at hiding the truth. Yoonkim was smiling like a fool as he admitted how he had a hard time making a straight face in front of their coworkers. That was when Yoonkim noticed how Jaehyuk was just staring at him with a gentle smile on his face, and admitted how he wished they weren't at work right then. Well, Jaehyuk is just flirting. And although taken aback, Yoonkim returned it in kind. Yoonkim suddenly remembered the question one of his friends asked last time and suddenly asked Jaehyuk what made him fall for Yoonkim. At first, Jaehyuk looked like he was about to answer it, making Yoonkim anxious for some reason, but Jaehyuk seemed to have changed his mind at the last minute and became mysterious. The flustered Yoonkim tried to persuade Jaehyuk to spill the beans but to no avail. Well, the answer wasn't something grand. This Jaehyuk, who could only smile boyishly at his first love, after all, fell in love at first sight with the ever-so innocent and adorable Yoonkyum. Not that it mattered. The most important thing is that the two of them could meet again. And they'll be together from then on with so much love between them. The end. This is the end of Yoonkyum and Jaehyuk's main story. But wait, there's more. On to the next part. We'll be sharing with you the special episodes of this series featuring a sneaky tiger and a gullible bunny. Literally. Well, okay, not exactly, but very close. In a small bunny village lived a short-eared bunny named Yoonkyum. As cute as short-eared bunnies are, he's not popular with the villagers and is teased for it every time. But he doesn't mind the bullying and slandering. He's a hard worker who grows carrots on his farms to raise his younger siblings, Yuno and Yuna. One day, his two cute siblings brought home a kitten. It is indeed a kitten, not a cat, but of a tiger. Of course, Yoonkyum was totally against keeping it at first. Whether it's a baby or not, a tiger is a tiger. How can bunnies leave with their natural predator? But since Yoonkyum is a total softie not only against his siblings, but also because of how cute the baby tiger is, he has no choice but to give in at the end. It is then decided that the baby tiger will live with the bunny siblings from then on. Yoonkyum might have thought that he'd gone crazy for even letting that happen. But it still didn't stop him from worrying about it either, thinking that since it's still a baby, it must have been separated from its mom. And so, Yoonkyum decided to help it find its mom. The next day, while the twins went out to do some errands in the forest, they left the little tiger in Yoonkyum's care. When Yoonkyum went into the house to feed the baby tiger some carrots, he was surprised when someone suddenly pushed him down to the floor. It turns out a tiger had been waiting for the twins to leave and finally get Yoonkyum to himself. Without warning, the now full-grown tiger started kissing Yoonkyum, who was afraid of getting eaten. However, when the tiger mentioned that he wanted Yoonkyum to give birth to his cubs, Yoonkyum's response was if it's possible to do that even between guys. It is likely in the Omega verse, which I don't think is true in this series. Anyway, the tiger, of course, was messing with Yoonkyum but was still caught off guard by the response he got, which only motivated him to go further with his teasing. And so, they did the deed. Maybe not under Yoonkyum's complete consent, but he still let the tiger get his way with him. That is, until Yoonkyum couldn't take the tiger's stamina anymore. He had no choice but to transform into his full animal bunny form as a sign of protest. Instead of getting angry or annoyed, the tiger seemed to have found Yoonkyum's tiny antic adorable. He promised Yoonkyum that it's just the beginning and they'll take it slow. Well. Every night in a small hut outside the village, someone would continuously slither his way to be with Yoonkyum under his bed covers. It would make Yoonkyum cringe every time, but he tries to be inconspicuous in fear for his life. Although it's not like this individual does anything other than hold his hand and hug Yoonkyum close. And here we are, only having our body pillows to hug every night. Oh, wait, is it just me? The following day, while the twins went for their errands, well, they're probably just out playing in the woods. They once again left the cute baby tiger in their big brother's care after so many reminders like some mom and dad leaving their kid to a babysitter while they're having a date night. It's been 2 weeks since the twins brought the baby tiger home, and it started living with the bunny siblings. They're probably the only bunnies living with their natural predator under one roof. Often, Yoonkyum would leave the baby tiger in the house with a plate of carrots as he left for the marketplace in the village. Before leaving, Yoonkyum would often remind the tiger to stay inside the house, never let other villagers see him, and only go when everyone's asleep at night. Yoonkyum still had no idea why such a tiger would want to live with them, but he tried his best to be as accommodating as possible. He's always anxious, having no choice but to leave the tiger alone in the house, and would often try his best to get back home as early as possible. In the marketplace, Yoonkyum tries to sell the carrots from his farm to earn a living. He usually doesn't get to sell anything, thanks to the shameless and pitiful Mr. Park. He's another carrot seller who would often badmouth Yoonkyum and ruin his reputation with other customers. At least Yoonkyum still has the bunny peddler Hyunsu, who sympathizes with Yoonkyum, buys his carrots, and lets Yoonkyum know about news going around the village. A tiger had been spotted roaming in their village at night. This information made Yoonkyum nervous as he had an idea of how authentic this information was. Yoonkyum still put it off as simple rumors to scare kids. But according to Hyunsu, paw prints have been seen up on the mountain as large as a pot. And so, Hyunsu reminded Yoonkyum to be careful since he lives right under the mountain. After all, tigers are fast and stealthy. Before anyone blinked an eye, a tiger would have already attacked them. Hyunsu. You have no idea how fast and stealthy tigers can be. By evening, Yoonkyum was fretting as he arrived home. Still thinking about the news he had heard earlier, he couldn't help but wonder if the tiger was still inside or if he had indeed snatched some random bunny somewhere. Before he could open the door and check for himself, however, another bunny, Mr. Ha, arrived. He wanted to ask Yoonkyum, as a neighbor, to lend a helping hand on his farm that month. Yoonkim, being the nice guy that he is, readily agreed. And since having a pair of hands for free is not enough, Mr. Ha shamelessly tells Yoonkim to bring some carrots for the other workers while he's at it, as if Yoonkim has a share of the profits of his farm or something. As Yoonkim pondered his predicament of being forced to give his carrots away even though he barely had enough to last them until the next harvest, someone snatched him into the house. It was the baby tiger, now humanoid, cursing at Mr. Ha and telling Yoonkim not to do what the old fart says. Since the tiger's hands are all over Yoonkim, he demands to be let go. But the tiger pointed out that why should he when he holds him all night long? And that Yoonkim is always waiting for him every time, too, while pretending to be asleep. In Yoonkiem's defense, it wasn't like he was anticipating the tiger's arrival. Yoonkim couldn't sleep properly, fearing that he'd eat him. Some creatures snuggle their owners every time to check if they're good enough for a meal. Then again, Yoonkim is a different kind of meal. Every time there were just the two of them, the tiger would try to cozy up with Yoonkim and remind him how he promised to give birth to his cubs. Therefore, they need to get to work as often as they can. Again, if only this were Omega-verse, how exciting would that be? Yoonkim would often think he'd much prefer if the twins brought home an ordinary wild beast and not someone from the tiger clan with a strange attachment to him. Yoonkim still fusses over the situation he found himself in, but it's not like he's totally against or dislikes it. To make matters worse, the tiger again told Yoonkim to ignore what Mr. Ha asked, promising to take the old fart by the throat and throw him somewhere in the mountain the next time he comes around. He said it, trying to be sweet and protective, but Yoonkim felt differently. Yoonkim and the tiger were in such a cozy situation when the twins got home. Yoonkim was fretting about how to explain to the twins that the kitty they brought home was, in fact, not at all a kitten and had tricked them. There was no need for the fuss since Yoonkim was the only one who knew nothing. This was evident by how protective the twins were to Jaehyuk. So, once upon a time, a baby tiger approached them while the twins played in the woods. They played with the baby tiger all day. And once it was time to go home, they wanted to bring the baby tiger. At that time, the baby tiger turned into a grown man and told the twins that he wanted to be a part of their family. And thus, Chapter 1 began. The twins were, of course, scolded by Yoonkim for lying to him. They owned up for their mistake, but that didn't stop them from insisting on letting the tiger Jaehyuk stay with them. Jaehyuk, of course, was on their side, explaining to Yoonkim that he asked the twins, and that he does want to live together with Yoonkim. Yoonkim hesitated. It's just that unbelievable of a situation to live with a tiger in a bunny village. It felt surreal that Yoonkim couldn't help but think how Jaehyuk was probably messing with him. Then again, it's not like he has any choice. Even if he refuses, it's not like Jaehyuk would leave. Jaehyuk said he knew that Yoonkim was only hesitating because of the other villagers, but once again, he promised to take care of them so that no one ever bothered Yoonkim. That said, there is no more reason to chase Jaehyuk away, and Yoonkim was forced to accept the situation. The twins were thrilled, of course. That was their first day as an official tiger and bunny family. The next day, Yoonkim was at Mr. Ha's residence, helping to do some odd jobs here and there for free. Since Jaehyuk told Yoonkim to ignore Mr. Ha's request, Yoonkim had no choice but to make an excuse so he could go out. After all, ignoring Mr. Ha's requests is hard, especially in their village since he's the wealthiest person, not to mention the longest one who had lived there. Getting on his wrong side isn't something one would want. Yoonkim barely managed to stop Jaehyuk from taking care of Mr. Ha and the villagers, too, but he did, convincing Jaehyuk that he needs some time to take care of. Having a tiger leave with them seems to complicate the life that Yoonkim wanted to have. After all, he wants to work hard enough to provide for the twins and leave a simple life like everybody else. Then again, even without Jaehyuk, the fact that the other villagers are already ostracizing him for simply having short ears makes that life impossible. Yes, he's talking about you, asshat Mr. Park. How nice would it be if Jaehyuk mauls you over? Now that's a sight. That afternoon, Yoonkim was waiting for someone in the meadow. His childhood friend, Haejun, the wolf, had especially brought him some fruits and told him to eat some for himself and not give everything to his siblings. While they were spending time together, Haejun noticed that Yoonkim was going through a lot these days. He asked Yoonkim if he would stay in the bunny village forever. Yoonkim asked what Haejun meant by his question, and Haejun pointed out how the other villagers still bullied him even after all this time. Yoonkim tried to make excuses that he was fine and had already made a friend, but Haejun didn't buy it. Instead, he offered for Yoonkim to live in his village. Haejun explained that it might sound scary, but at least in their village, they don't bully others. It's going to be hard, but Haejun is there for him. Hold on a minute. This is a smelling love triangle. As exciting as that sounds. Don't you dare, Mr. Haejun. It was already getting late when Yoonkim headed home with the leftovers of Haejun's gifts in his arms. He was thinking about his conversation with Haejun earlier and his offer, and one that Yoonkim declined. Moving to another village isn't easy. Forget about Yunkiem. He's more worried about how his siblings might feel if they move to a village where they're considered outsiders more than ever. He's not confident he can assure their safety from other bigger animals. When Yunkiem got home, he found Jahyuk playing with the kids by taking turns and getting lifted to the air. The twins excitedly welcomed their big brother and told him to ask Jahyuk to do the same for him, which Jahyuk did without Yunkiem's consent. It's a perfect excuse to hug Yunkiem, too. Jahyuk, you sneaky tiger. While having Yunkiem in his arms, however, Jahyuk suddenly started sniffing him. Without saying anything, Jahyuk stared at Yunkiem. This made Yunkiem nervous, thinking that Jahyuk wanted to eat him, literally. And so he was forced to escape Jahyuk and instead declared that they'd be having dinner. Yunkiem is already constantly on the edge, just living with natural predators. How can he even think of moving? Later that night, after Yunkiem sent the kids to bed, he organized the carrots he would keep and sell in the village the next day. After all, against his better judgment, the old fart Mr. Ha still managed to take a bunch of his carrots. Yunkiem was still in the middle of tidying up when the very wet and half-naked Jahyuk arrived. As he continued his task, Yunkiem wondered why Jahyuk was wet and worried how he might catch a cold despite being a tiger. Once again, Jahyuk wordlessly stared at Yunkiem and, without warning, started sniffing and getting all over Yunkiem to the point that they fell over the floor. Yunkiem tried to stop Jahyuk and ask him what had suddenly gotten into him. Jahyuk responded that he could still smell a wolf's scent on Yunkiem. Jahyuk was so aggressive that Yunkiem was trembling in fear. The tiger started bombarding Yunkiem's questions about the mysterious wolf. He admitted that he even crossed the lake to get a whiff of the wolf, but to no avail. Despite his fear, Yunkiem explained that the wolf did not hurt him in any way and was just a friend. That response didn't bode well with Jahyuk, and he sarcastically asked Yunkiem how he could be friends with a wolf. Well, Yunkiem is sleeping with a tiger. Why can't he be friends with a wolf? That's just racial discrimination. Don't people go to jail for that? Hypocrite Jahyuk pointed out that bunnies can't be friends with wolves, but bunnies can sleep with tigers. Yunkiem was speechless at Jahyuk's words. Jealous people are irrational. That's just how things are. Yunkiem defended that although Haejun is a wolf, he is Yunkiem's friend. Hearing Yunkiem call Haejun's name upset Jahyuk even more, as they're on a first-name basis. As he started to undress Yunkiem, Jahyuk told him that wolves couldn't be trusted and he was a danger to a bunny like Yunkiem. But Yunkiem has nothing to worry about because Jahyuk will find and kill him, so Haejun can't bother Yunkiem again. And he said it with a calm smile on his face, too. Jealous people can be irrational and psychopaths. They're hot but still can be irrational and psychopaths. All Yunkiem could do was tell Jahyuk not to do it while he sniffled and trembled in fear. Frustrated with how things had turned, Jahyuk held Yunkiem. The latter tried to stop Jahyuk, but the tiger pointed out how the bunny should be already used to it by now. After all, snuggling with each other wasn't the only thing they did every night. Jahyuk is also training Yunkiem to get used to him. Yunkiem might have struggled initially, but eventually, the short-eared bunny got used to it. Embarrassed, Yunkiem pointed out that even though he had such a reaction, that didn't mean he liked what Jahyuk was doing to him. Why does this stupid bunny always say the wrong things at the bad times? He's always digging his own grave. After hearing Yunkiem's words, Jahyuk decided that Yunkiem probably prefers something else. Well, he did struggle at first, but after he instructed Yunkiem to focus on kissing him, they eventually managed to do it. Jahyuk was so into it that he warned Yunkiem not to turn into his full bunny form again like last time suddenly. Yunkiem eventually ended up doing whatever Jahyuk asked him to do, hoping that by doing so, they'd stop doing whatever they were doing. But every time Yunkiem does something, Jahyuk asks something more ridiculous than the previous one. They only managed to stop after Jahyuk was finally satisfied himself. And just as he was about to tell Yunkiem to do it again, Yunkiem turned into his full bunny form out of exhaustion. Jahyuk tried waking Yunkiem up, but he wouldn't budge. The following day, Yunkiem woke up with his back hurting. He thought of going to work but felt so warm that he just wanted to sleep in. When Yunkiem opened his eyes, he was surprised to see his bunny paws and realized that he had probably been so exhausted that he transformed unconsciously. As he tried to remember what he had done the day before for him to get exhausted and for his bed to be warm, he suddenly noticed how he was sleeping on top of a full-grown tiger. Although the said tiger looked like it was sleeping peacefully, the little bunny couldn't help but tremble. Whenever Yunkiem sees the baby tiger, he often wonders if it is truly Jahyuk. After all, according to legends, some predators are capable of freely shape-shifting, such as turning into their human forms with their clothes on or into baby versions of their animal forms. As the baby tiger purred and licked him, Yunkiem just can't let himself believe those legends. They were all true, as now he's lying on top of a full-grown tiger Jahyuk. Remembering what had happened the night before and seeing the situation he was in at the moment, the trembling Yunkiem cursed at Jahyuk for once again lying about his true animal form. Jahyuk has big paws. Just one swat from one of those will send him to his demise. He tried to climb down of Jahyuk before he woke up, Too bad Jihyuk is already awake. He caught the animal Yunkim in his human hands right after he transformed. But naked, might I add. After Yunkim realized what had happened, he tried to flail around and escape Jihyuk. Jihyuk, on the other hand, sighed and asked Yunkim if he didn't like the big version of Jihyuk. The latter explained that he only did that because he was worried that Yunkim might get a cold. And if Yunkim is scared of his true form, he'll never turn into that again. A declaration that confused Yunkim. In Yunkim's eyes, Jihyuk is one weird tiger. He's both scary and sweet, like how he lost his temper last night and did whatever he wanted with Yunkim. And yet Jihyuk also worried about Yunkim's well-being. And Jihyuk is willing to give up a part of him if only it puts Yunkim at ease. Suddenly, the twins and Jihyuk were whispering to themselves, which made Yunkim curious. They planned to have Yunkim stay home that day and not go to work. Jihyuk even offered to bring Yunkim whatever he needed and go to work instead of Yunkim himself. A predator selling carrots. That's a fascinating sight to see. Although Jihyuk failed to convince Yunkim, the power of the twins' charms didn't fail them. However, it was not a 100% co. Not being able to say no to his siblings, who wanted to bring Yunkim somewhere because they missed him a lot, Yunkim promised to only work until noon to spend more time with them. Jihyuk is happy about Yunkim's promise, although he wouldn't want Yunkim to work too much if it were up to him. After all, Yunkim is still going to have his baby tiger soon. Somewhere along the way, Yunkim gave up Jihyuk's delusions and taught himself to humor him whenever he talks nonsense like this. As Yunkim sat in his usual spot in the marketplace to sell his carrots, he couldn't help wondering about Jihyuk's intentions for him. Jihyuk often acts weird that Yunkim wonders if he'll get kicked out of his tiger village, and he seems pretty serious about all his threats and confessions, which makes the whole liking Yunkim thing unbelievable. After all, Yunkim was sure he'd never met any tiger before Jihyuk came along. Suddenly, Yunkim's attention was caught by Mr. Park's boastings of how his carrots give the strength of a tiger and how addicting they are. As if lying through his teeth wasn't enough, he suddenly pulled Yunkim into his monologue, claiming that Yunkim's carrots are terrible, pointing out how he has stubby little ears that look like rats. Yunkim tried to ignore Mr. Park's words, who continued to slander Yunkim's ears and spread ridiculous claims against his carrots, as if the two could be related. But the loudmouth slandering Mr. Park had to include Yunkim's deceased parents in his web of lies, who had died from being killed by wild beasts. They claimed they couldn't hear the beasts' footsteps because they also had short ears, and that Yunkim had to care for his siblings after their deaths. This shameless lying beatard. What exactly is the point of him saying all those things? Even a child has better manners than him. Yunkim also thought that the beatard had gone too far because, the next thing we knew, Yunkim was already in front of Mr. Park and just flat out told him that his parents don't have short ears. Flustered that Yunkim would ever dare to speak up for himself, Mr. Park defamed Yunkim's ancestors and claimed they were probably the ones from whom Yunkim got the short ears. Not letting it slide anymore, Yunkim accused the beatard that he's just bullying Yunkim because he doesn't want him to sell his carrots. And it's pathetic and cruel to do to someone. Having been called out directly for his shameless actions, Mr. Park tried to cover his embarrassment by acting aggressively towards Yunkim. But Yunkim didn't care. Yunkim will let all the insults and bullying regarding his ears slide and not say or do anything in return. But it's a different story if somebody slanders his family. Yunkim's words hit bullseye because Mr. Park turned red and couldn't say anything anymore to defend himself, so he resorted to violence. Mr. Park slapped Yunkim right in front of those many people. And since that wasn't enough, he also drags the twins into the discussions, saying how Yunkim can't even take care of them, and yet he's telling him not to talk about them. He claims he's just worried about Yunkim, yet he's being turned into the bad guy. Well, duh. He's the reason why Yunkim couldn't sell his carrots and earn for the kids. This narcissistic beatard who probably doesn't own a mirror, and he dares to get mad. Having had enough of his slanders and accusations, Yunkim shoved the crates holding the beatard's carrots. As if summoning all the courage he had in his body, Yunkim continued to talk and fight back even after the slanderer tried to grab and hurt Yunkim once again. The beatard shoved Yunkim to the ground, saying things like he's not picking on him because they both sell carrots. After all, who would want to buy something from an orphan with short ears? He claims that everyone in the village hates Yunkim and is the only one who doesn't see it. He even had the nerve of saying that he wished the tiger would take Yunkim away. He already did in ways the beatard couldn't even imagine. Plus, come on, why does having short ears equate to being hated? Is it just this beatard who's stupid, or was stupidity a widespread disease that affected those living inside the village? It's the latter, because the worst part of this event is that, even though some villagers tried to calm down the beatard and get him away from Yunkim, none of the remaining villagers did anything to deny his claims or help Yunkim up. Instead, they just stared at him and whispered things about him. Then again, it's not like it's the first time this happened to Yunkim. That's just how hard it is to be a breadwinner. Days will come when he feels so useless and depressed, but that doesn't mean he should dwell on it. If he can't sell his carrots that day, he'll try again tomorrow and the next one after that. He'll be able to eat dinner and spend time with the kids when he gets home, and that's enough for him to feel better. As Yoonkiam continued on his way home, he suddenly noticed a baby tiger seated on a boulder and looked like he was searching for someone despite being soaked in the rain. As soon as Jaehyuk saw Yoonkiam, he ran to him. Yoonkiam asked what Jaehyuk was doing there when he told him to stay home since someone might see him. Jaehyuk immediately transformed, apologized, and explained that he got worried about Yoonkiam because it suddenly started to rain. Jaehyuk assured Yoonkiam that nobody saw him and, out of nowhere, produced a po that he used to cover Yoonkiam since he might catch a cold. He then took the leftover carrots that Yoonkiam was holding and urged him to go home with him. Yoonkiam suddenly started crying, and Jaehyuk kissed him. As Yoonkiam continued to sob, Jaehyuk asked who, why, and what made Yoonkiam act like that so he could take care of them. Before spilling the beans and telling on Mr. Park for teasing Yoonkiam about his ears, Yoonkiam expressed his regret of going to the village that day instead of just staying with Jaehyuk and the kids at home, like how they had wanted him to do in the first place. Yoonkiam let himself go as he clutched onto Jaehyuk as if he's his final solace. Jaehyuk, in return, tried to calm him down by saying that his ears were cute and even shorter than Yoonkiam's. It wasn't the first time someone made fun of Yoonkiam's ears, nor was it the worst. And yet, for some reason, he felt so vulnerable and weak. Perhaps it's because it was raining, or maybe because someone came all the way to walk him home despite the weather. Jaehyuk is a tiger who wants to live with Yoonkiam, a bunny. He firmly believes that Yoonkiam can give him a baby tiger someday. Yoonkiam can't tell if Jaehyuk likes him, at least when they're making out under the rain. Yoonkiam wants to believe that Jaehyuk's feelings are real. One drizzling morning, a butt-naked Jaehyuk woke up beside an equally butt-naked, still sleeping Yoonkiam. Wanting to continue what they were doing the night before while Yoonkiam was asleep, Jaehyuk started to have his way with Yoonkiam until the latter woke up. It's been a week since Yoonkiam last came to the market. He had never imagined that it could be okay not to work. As he did, even after the rain stopped, he still didn't go to the village. Yoonkiam likes staying at home, especially since Jaehyuk has been helping around the house by bringing water and picking fruits for their family. Yoonkiam feels like if the two of them started farming together, they would do well. That morning, Yoonho was the first to greet Yoonkiam, who had asked his older brother why he and Jaehyuk didn't sleep in the same room as he and Yoona. The answer is not meant for such innocent ears to hear yet. And so Yoonkiam had to make an excuse that the room was too small for the four of them to use. This was coming from the person reprimanding his siblings about lying. Anyway, feeling in the mood now that the rain had finally stopped, Yoonkiam suggested they leave the house. This made the kids excited. Later that day, the four of them went to a meadow. While the twins played and hopped, Yoonkiam and Jaehyuk stayed back and just enjoyed the nice weather after such a long time. Then again, Jaehyuk had other ideas on what they should do while the kids play. As the two finally settled, lying on the grass, Yoonkiam pointed out how the twins were probably the only bunnies who had ever brought a tiger home. Jaehyuk mysteriously disagrees and says that Yoonkiam did the same thing long ago, surprising Yoonkiam. Before Yoonkiam could ask Jaehyuk about it, however, Yoonho suddenly came and laid on top of his brother. He and Yoona each offered clover leaves to Yoonkiam and Jaehyuk to eat, which the two graciously accepted. Once upon a time, a cute baby tiger had wandered too far from his neighborhood. He reflected on his situation, knowing that he was not supposed to have gone to the area of another species. As he was thinking of returning, someone suddenly grabbed his tiny body. In his human form, a young bunny had excitedly mistaken the baby tiger for a kitten. The young bunny brought the baby tiger to his home and got some carrots to share. However, the young bunny seemed satisfied by seeing the kitten eat everything himself. The baby tiger didn't want to but eventually gave in and started munching on the raw carrots. As the baby tiger is already on his second carrot, Yoonkiam gets called by his mother. Hurriedly, Yoonkiam hid the baby tiger under his blanket and told him not to come out. The young bunny greeted his parents, who had just arrived from the market, and brought him some strawberries. All the young bunny's misunderstanding caused the baby tiger to hide inside a bunny family's humble house. The young Yoonkiam was so happy that the baby tiger pretended to be a cat for a bit just for him. And so, the following day, when Yoonkiam's parents go to work, he plays house with the baby tiger. Since the young bunny had always wanted to have a younger brother, he decided that the baby tiger would be his brother from then on. Yoonkiam was so happy to have the baby tiger around that he promised to play with him every day and even to give the baby tiger all the strawberries he received the day before. Then, the baby tiger realized that Yoonkiam had probably only played like that by himself. As if to prove this theory, a couple of young bunnies around young Yoonkiam's age appeared and made fun of Yoonkiam for playing by himself. Young Yoonkiam tried to ignore them, but the other young bunnies kicked poor Yoonkiam instead. They also started making fun of the game that Yoonkiam was playing and his tiny ears. Having had enough, the baby tiger chomped on one of the bullies' hands. The baby tiger wasn't satisfied with that and even attacked the other kids soon after the three bullies ran away, traumatized by a cat. The young Yunkiam gave his tough savior a grateful hug, admitting that those kids had constantly bullied and made fun of him. From then on, the baby tiger decided to protect Yunkiam so that no one could ever make fun of him. For a moment, the baby tiger wished they could live peacefully and happily together forever. But all good things must come to an end. One night, the baby tiger heard young Yunkiam's parents talk about a tiger sighting in their area at night. A few people had spotted it, and even Mr. Choi had heard one. They worry that the tiger might attack their village if this continues. The baby tiger understood that the spotted tiger might be his family who came looking for him. After all, he's been there a while, and he had not informed his family where he was beforehand. Deciding that it's finally time to say goodbye, the baby tiger did so while young Yunkiam was sleeping and slipped out of the house. He had wanted to stay with Yunkiam more, but that may have to wait until the future. The baby tiger hadn't gone that far when he heard a crying Yunkiam come after him, demanding where he was going while leaving Yunkiam behind. The young bunny suddenly fell while he ran after the baby tiger. As Yunkiam tried to get up, a young boy helped him and scolded him for running like that, causing him to hurt himself. The baby tiger, who had turned into a young boy this time, explained to Yunkiam that he was not a cat and was, in fact, a human like Yunkiam. He said that he needed to go back home now, and Yunkiam couldn't go to his place because it was too far, and he was not supposed to be there in the first place. However, someday, once he gets older and becomes the ruler of the mountain, he promises to come to see Yunkiam again. A promise that was sealed with a peck on Yunkiam's cheek. As he sprinted away, the young boy declared for them to marry and leave together someday, leaving a confused young bunny behind. And so, the promise made under the moonlight would have been fulfilled in the distant future. As Yunkiam was doing some chores in the kitchen, he was still thinking about what Jaehyuk had said about him bringing a tiger home before. It's bugging him. Yet Jaehyuk keeps ignoring Yunkiam whenever he asks about it. The only thing he can remember is getting a cat home. Suddenly, Yuna appeared behind Yunkiam, asking him to tuck her in since she couldn't sleep. While at it, Yunkiam asked Yuna if she liked Jaehyuk and what she liked about him. Yuna said she likes him because he gives her piggyback rides and plays with her. The innocence of children is so beautiful, with simple wants and simple needs. Yuna added that she wants them to live together forever so Yunkiam can't kick Jaehyuk out. Yunkiam assured her that he wouldn't. When Yuna asks her older brother if he likes Jaehyuk, although taken aback, Yunkiam admits he does. Speaking off, Jaehyuk was supposed to be just looking for fruits but hadn't returned home yet, which he seems to be doing a lot these days. Meanwhile, somewhere in the forest, Jaehyuk was walking away from something when he noticed his dirty sleeve and decided to go to the lake before heading home with the pack of promised fruits in hand. Behind him, the ground seems to be drenched with blood. Now, this is interesting. Is this the tiger baring his teeth? In the village, news has been reported about how a tiger had attacked the eldest son of Mr. Ha. And although the son wasn't killed, it was said that he'd be disabled for life. What's strange is that not long ago, the second son was also attacked by a tiger. One of the older villagers commented that the attacks are Mr. Ha's karma since he's always been rude to the other villagers. Hyunsu added that everyone else in the village probably feels the same as he does. On another part of the village, the Beatard voiced his curiosity about Yunkiam not going to work for over 2 weeks now. Well, we wonder why. He said it was strange for him not to go to work when Yunkiam had siblings he had to provide for. The Beatard's friend mentioned that strange things have been happening ever since Yunkiam stopped coming to the village, too, making him conclude that perhaps Yunkiam got attacked by the tiger as well. Then again, he doesn't care. What he's sure, though, is that Yunkiam is hiding something that has been making him money. Something similar. However, no amount of slandering, rumors, and hate could ever take that from him. Meanwhile, at the back of their house, Yunkiam and Jaehyuk were making out when the twins started looking and calling for them. Jaehyuk laughed that it was funny how the twins immediately came looking for them when they just disappeared for a second. Jaehyuk added that it makes the kids scared, to which Yunkiam teased how even tigers have something they're afraid of, such as the fate of being a parent. Since they were summoned, they have no choice but to come forward. When they saw the two, Yuno said he wanted to eat peaches. Yunkiam tried to scold Yuno for making Jaehyuk go out on fruit-picking errands, although the errand runner didn't mind. Fruit picking is always better than food murdering, after all. With that settled, Yuna also asked for 3 pieces, and soon after, Jaehyuk left to get them. As Yunkiam saw Jaehyuk off, he couldn't help feeling a sense of déjà vu for some reason. A bit later, the Beatard can be seen sneaking around bushes as he tries to look for Yunkiam's house sneakily. As the Beatard tried to be sneaky and wonder where Yunkiam was, Yuno suddenly called out to his brother, revealing that Yunkiam was indeed home. Yuno asks for some fruit, and Yunkiam agrees to give him and Yuna an apple each before dinner. The Beatard, hearing this, wondered how Yunkiam could afford to buy fruits, making his suspicions about Yunkiam having something to hide more apparent. That was when Yuna suddenly appeared behind the Beatard and accused him of being a thief, threatening to tell on him to her brother. After all, her brother did say that people who sneak around other people's homes are thieves. Well, she's not wrong. To keep her quiet, the Beatard covered her mouth and manhandled her. It's good that Yoonkim was already looking for Yoona and came upon the scene. Safe to say, Yoonkim did not like what he saw. Yoonkim immediately took Yoona from the Beatard's hold and demanded why he was there, as if bullying Yoonkim in the market wasn't enough. The Beatard was now invading his home as well. But just like how he's always been, the Beatard turned the table to Yoonkim, saying things like, Yoonkim should be thankful because the Beatard was worried about Yoonkim, who's staying at home sulking because he was told the truth. Yes, of course, and that completely justifies sneaking around the house and hoping the owner is not home. And because he's shameless, the Beatard started looking around the place as if he had been invited to do so, spouting nonsense, things like how Yoonkim probably made money and how he should share it with his neighbors. Even if Yoonkim did come into some money, which he did, why would this Beatard ever think he'd get a taste of it? Shameless and stupid. The Beatard made his way to the kitchen and found the baskets of fruits that were meant for Yoonkim and his family. Knowing precisely what the Beatard came there to do, Yoonkim didn't hesitate to point it out to him and accuse him of wanting to steal whatever it was that he had. Of course, the Beatard denied it, even though he was already holding the basket of apples from the kitchen. He even dared to accuse Yoonkim of being greedy. Yoonkim, however, doesn't plan on getting intimidated and trampled on ever again, so he forces the Beatard to leave. Not only Yoona, but he's also scaring Yoonho. How dare he, seeing as his attempt to intimidate isn't working. The Beatard agreed to leave, albeit saying that Yoonkim will get his karma for being greedy. It should be the other way around, though. The Beatard hadn't gone far, however, when Jaehyuk suddenly attacked him in his baby tiger form. Yoonkim covered Yoona's eyes, not wanting her to see the attack that a tiger cub was doing to a full-grown man. I know, what the hell? The Beatard at first thought it was just a strong cat attacking him, and when he realized that it was a baby tiger, it was already too late, as Jaehyuk didn't look like he'd easily let the Beatard off. As the events unfold, Yoonkim once again feels like something like it had happened to him before. Cue the events from 3 chapters back. Amidst the chaos and bleeding that he sustained, the Beatard concluded that Yoonkim's lack of visits to the market was related to the attacks on Mr. Ha's sons by a tiger. He probably thought that everything was under Yoonkim's orders. The Beatard tried to run away while promising to get back at Yoonkim the next time he saw him, and again, Jaehyuk didn't look like he would let that happen quickly. Jaehyuk ran after the fleeing Beatard, and Yoonkim followed him after telling the kids to go inside their room until he got back. He tries to stop Jaehyuk and assure him he's fine so Jaehyuk doesn't have to hurt him more than he already did. Amidst the chase, all the clues and memories came together in Yoonkyum's head. He remembered when kids teased him for not having friends and how he tried to defend himself by saying that he did have a friend he promised to meet again once they grew up. All of those made him realize who Jaehyuk was and made him remember the promise they made. This adorable little bunny, how can anyone dare make him cry? Back when Yoonkim was still young, an equally young baby wolf Haejun asked why Yoonkim was always alone and if he didn't have any friends. Baby Yoonkim denied this, of course, and said that he did have a friend, and although he doesn't know his name, Yoonkyum's friend promised they'd see him again. Innocently excited, Haejun wanted Yoonkim to introduce him to his friends so they could play together, to which Yoonkim readily excitedly agreed. A few years later, he still thinks that the friend he made a few years ago is a cat. Yoonkim can't help but remember him whenever he sees a cat in the street. He's still waiting for the promised day to happen, which, for some reason, really made him happy the moment it was given. Years passed, but Yoonkim didn't stop longing for his kitty friend, and now they're finally reunited. Back to the present, Yoonkim came upon Jaehyuk in his human form with the Beatard fainted on the ground. Jaehyuk assured Yoonkim that the Beatard wasn't dead and was just a little hurt. After all, he just couldn't let Yoonkim be bullied like that. He then slowly walked to Yoonkim and rested his head on Yoonkim's shoulder, pleading for Yoonkim to not be afraid of him. Instead of responding, Yoonkim started to talk about the kitty he once brought home. It had dark fur and was so strong that it had no problem chasing Yoonkyum's bullies away. The kitty promised to see each other again, and they did. Yoonkyum apologized to Jaehyuk for not recognizing him sooner and started crying again. Feeling guilty, Yoonkyum tried to explain himself, like he hadn't forgotten their promise before and thought Jaehyuk was a cat back then. But of course, there was no need for that because Jaehyuk could not get angry at him. The most important thing is that the promised day has finally come, with the promised person who had been waiting by him to remember all this time. The following day, Yoonkyum was the first to wake up and immediately stared at the sleeping Jaehyuk beside him. He started mumbling about how he couldn't believe that Jaehyuk wasn't a cat back then since he was so tiny. Jaehyuk's small ears caught Yoonkyum's attention, and he attempted to touch it but changed his mind, afraid that he might wake Jaehyuk up. Although, there was no need for that since Jaehyuk had already been awake all this time. Changing the topic, Yoonkyum voiced out his concern about the Beatard Mr. Park telling on them to everyone in the village, but Jaehyuk assured him that there was no need to worry about it. He also said it's about time that he heads to the town. Jaehyuk was on his way to the village with Yoonkyum in tow. He's worried that Jaehyuk is going to hurt someone. Not to mention that the villagers would freak out after seeing Jaehyuk, so Yoonkim wanted to try and talk to them first. And so, Jaehyuk sincerely asked Yoonkim what he wanted him to do. Yoonkim admitted that he didn't like the other villagers. They've been bullying him all this time, and some of them are just betards. But he also has good memories in the village, the friends he made that comforted him, and his parents who brought him up. And he met Jaehyuk in the town as well. All Yoonkim wanted was for the four of them to live together like they are now. Jaehyuk smiled and told Yoonkim that nothing was more important to him than what Yoonkim wanted, and so Yoonkim shouldn't worry and trust him. In the village, a beaten-up Mr. Ha and Mr. Park and other villagers were in a kowtow in front of the lordy Jaehyuk and stunned Yoonkim. They were trying to apologize for all the wrongdoings that they had done to Yoonkim by far. Yoonkim couldn't believe how easy it had been to subdue everyone else, that there was no point in him worrying for them. Jaehyuk was angry that a bunny was being bullied in his territory, and no one bothered to stop it. He reminded them he didn't do anything about it because Yoonkim didn't want any fuss. But from then on, anyone who goes out of line will be punished. Well, that was enough for Yoonkim. And so, he again tried to convince Jaehyuk that he was okay, especially since they promised not to bother him anymore. The Jaehyuk's face made Mr. Ha and Mr. Park realize what the natural hierarchy of their village looks like. Once, when the four of them are walking in the village, they see a group of children looking at Jaehyuk as if he's some hero. They voiced their jealousy of Yuna for being able to live with a tiger. When they asked if all tigers have small ears, Jaehyuk explained that the smaller the ears, the stronger that individual is. And so, the attention was thrown to Yoonkim, who had the smallest ears among the villagers and somehow started wanting to have ears like him someday. Yoonkim now sells not just carrots in his spot in the market, as he has grown other varieties of fruits as well. When Hyunsoo came over to congratulate him on his booming business, Yoonkim offered him some fresh apples, which he gratefully received. Hyunsoo then started commenting about how the other villagers seemed to be lining up in Yoonkim's spot to get his carrots and apples. Moreover, the old fart Mr. Ha and the betard Mr. Park finally left the village alone. All are good, though, since at least now they have a tiger lord who's said to be the most muscular tiger. The said lord is now on his way to them with a sack on his shoulder. That was when Hyunsoo decided it was his cue to leave. That action might seem rude to some, but Jaehyuk felt smug about it. On one of their walks, Yoonkim and Jaehyuk were talking about the plans that they wanted to do for the coming season, although it was just Yoonkim deciding everything and Jaehyuk just agreeing. And then Jaehyuk once again brought up the babies that the two of them would have, and he wanted 2 baby tigers, 1 boy and 1 girl. Yoonkim at first laughed since Jaehyuk was bringing it up again, and to humor him, Yoonkim pointed out that perhaps they'll have baby bunnies instead. And, of course, Jaehyuk is okay with that. Seasons changed, and years passed by. Although it seemed unbelievable, some said they saw a tiger that looked like a bunny, and others claimed they saw a bunny that looked like a tiger. Whether they were real or just a play in the light, the important thing is that this story ends with a happy ending. And that's it. We're finally at the end of the end. And it's for real this time. Thank you for being with us. See you on the next recap.